Sister Angela. We're going to come right back there.
I am sister. No, evangelist. Let's get that right.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. Here's what I wanted to say. Minister Christian, she brought up a good point, but I want to counter argue what she said. She said you got to be born a prophet. Now, in the New Testament, Paul talks about prophecy in a different context than the Old Testament. In the New Testament, he talks about prophecy as being edifying the body of Christ. See, when we start talking about prophecy, it might not be visions. It might not be, I heard a word that I have to deliver to somebody. It might be the fact that when you prophesy, you are building up the body of Christ. You have to clarify what you mean by prophecy. In the Old Testament, a prophet was a person who was a spokeswoman or person from God. In the New Testament, spokeswoman or man or person from God. In the New Testament, it's used differently. A prophet in the New Testament is somebody who edifies the body of Christ, who has a word of wisdom, a word of knowledge, and uplifts and builds up the church. That is considered prophecy in the New Testament. So make sure we stick with the right context so we don't confuse his body.
Now that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. So guess what? In the New Testament, I can edify you and I can uplift you, but I might not have been born into the prophetic. I might have been a Gentile and got saved, and I simply edified the body of Christ, and Paul considered that prophecy. If we do research in 1st and 2nd Corinthians, if we look at prophecy, he means edification and not hearing the word from God and delivering it. So it's a different context. Just wanted to share light.
And again, that's not what I'm talking about, but that's actually really good.
That's
a
good.
Conversation.
Yeah.
That's actually really good conversation.
But I just want to say that in that context, a person does not have to be born as a prophet to prophesy, because he uses it in a different context. And we need to understand what we're reading, but I know you're talking about, prophet as in the, I get it.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the office that you carry,
Amen.
that you walk in.
I do have a question though. What is prophecy? Because you use the term so vaguely. Because if you go from the Old Testament, which my interpretation is the mind of God, to inhabit the mind of God and to be able to represent the mind of God.
Right.
All right. So that's my interpretation. And then you go to the New Testament where you're speaking from, and you're saying to speak out the word and to edify and to uplift. Yes. So now, in bringing the two together, because Jesus Christ said that I did not come to negate the word, but to fulfill it. Okay. How do you bring those two together and say what it is? Okay, what is prophecy?
This right here.
I'm sorry, because truthfully, if that's the term, then you all operate in prophecy every Sunday.
True.
I'm going to open it up and I'm going to give it right to you.
Okay.
We have to combine the Old Testament and New Testament to come up with a good definition. If we just talk about the Old Testament definition, it falls under Minister Christian's definition of prophecy. But we have a New Testament. So now we have to take both definitions and combine them into one to come up with a good understanding. Obviously, it means to both speak a word from God and deliver it to somebody, office of a prophet. And in the New Testament, it means to edify and uplift the body of Christ. That is considered prophecy. Both definitions suffice. We just can't be closed-minded and say, if the Old Testament said this and the New Testament said this, which one is right? Both.
But how do you bring those two fulfillment together?
Together, what do you mean?
Well, I kind of feel like at the end of the day, you said prophet and you said prophesy. That's two different words that hold two totally different meanings. So the original question was, are you born a prophet? You still born a prophet. That means you are a mouthpiece for what God is saying in this hour. Right. And then we can even, if you go deeper, it's all types of prophets, real. People just don't know that. But you have prophets of the region, you got judgment prophets, it's different prophets, you gotta do your research. But if you're talking about just prophesying, then all I'm saying is that the spirit of prophecy can hit and anybody can prophesy. You can prophesy in music, and I think that you can prophesy, in dance. You can prophesy in a lot of different ways. So that's how you do the New Testament and the Old Testament. You just need to know what you're talking about. That's really what it comes down to. Because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it was any prophets in the New Testament. Were they?
Mm-hmm.
They were prophets or apostles?
In the book of Acts, 1 Corinthians, you have some prophets.
You did. You still had them teach. I think that you still had that, but they still had a school of the prophets. So that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that you need to know your word. You talking about prophesying, you talking about prophets. It's an office, and then the other one is, an act. Two totally different things.
Since we're giving questions to the panel, I have a question. So how do you know when you're prophesying to someone that you're saying the correct things? I mean, you might know that you're saying the correct things, but when you're giving it or you're, speaking it to someone else, they may not feel like what you're saying is accurate, even though you've seen from God, this is what's going to happen if you don't stop whatever you're doing. How do you get, like, some people get in condemnation because they're scared to, like, for instance, me, they're scared to give the word that God gave them, knowing that God gave me this word, I'm supposed to share it with you, but am worried about how people will perceive it. You can't be worried about that.
Jeremiah said, it's like fire shut up in my bones. When Jeremiah told the Lord, I'm too young to prophesy, and when he didn't do it, he said, it's like fire shut up in my bones. When you don't do it, you feel a burning, you feel an unction, and you know when you're supposed to prophesy, and you know when you're not. Now, I will say, because they did have the school of the prophets, obviously, people went to school to learn the spirit of prophecy.